Hey everyone, welcome to Maple Bits. Thanks for joining me today. You are all deadly plagues. Starting with Patient Zero, infect cities across the globe, collect DNA points, and evolve unique symptoms to customize your pathogen as you compete against each other to be the first to wipe out all of humanity. Plague Inc., originally released in 2017, designed by James Vaughn, published by Endemic Creations for 1 to 4 players or 5 players with an expansion, with a playtime of roughly 60 minutes. So join me as we go through this setup and how-to for the game Plague Inc., the board game. To begin, let's take a look at the different components that we're going to cover during the course of this video, starting with the main play board. This board is going to include, along the outside, the victory point track, including the DNA points that you're going to spend throughout the game. Next is the different continents throughout the board, where you're going to place the country cards as they come out in their respective locations. Next is the event cards. The event cards are going to come out during the course of play after destroying a country. In the upper left is the name of the event, and in the kind of lower center middle is going to be the conditions for its use, and an additional description of anything that you need to ignore or do specifically. Next are the different traits that will come out to evolve your bacteria or virus. In the upper left and across the top are going to be the DNA cost to purchase the evolution, as well as its name. And then down the middle is going to be any 1, 2, or 3 added effects that this is going to add to your bacteria or virus. Waterborne, heat resistance, infectivity, added lethality, etc. These are the country cards that are going to be revealed during play. In the upper left or on the lower side, depending on your view, is going to be the name and region or continent that you place the card. In the upper right, or whichever way you're looking, is going to be any specific conditions, whether it's airborne specific or waterborne specific. In the middle are going to be the country where you place your disease cubes, and if there's any specific resistances like heat or cold. Here we have the death die, the DNA helix for keeping track of your DNA progress as well as victory points, and the disease cubes. Next we have the card for endgame bonuses, your lucky escape, continent killer, and ultimate wipeout. All descriptions here indicate the added scoring at the end of the game. And finally is the bacteria slide. This is two-sided. In the upper left, it'll tell you the side that you're using, whether that be the bacteria or the virus side. Followed then by the core traits on the left-hand side, the evolution spaces around the lower and right side, and then lastly, the turn summary down the right side of the player board, indicating exactly what you do on your turn before the next player's turn. Hey guys, welcome to what will be a 3-player setup of the game Plague Inc. So to begin, put the main playboard in the center of the table, alongside with the card mat, the endgame bonuses, and the death die, next to the board so all players can access. Then hand out to each player a bacteria or viral side of their color of choice, including their disease cubes and their DNA helix that will go on the victory point track to begin. Next, you want to take the trait deck, hand out 5 to each player around the board, then put the remaining traits in their corresponding place at the top of the board. So once all players have their trait cards, I'll just go ahead and put these sort of in view for the guys. There we go. So once all players then have their trait cards, 5 dealt out in total, Next, you're going to want to go ahead and shuffle the event cards and create an event deck also on the play mat. So taking the event deck here and then putting it in its respective position. Next, you want to take the country cards like this and pull out the starting country cards that are indicated with the red symbols in the corner. So taking these two separated decks, shuffle the starting cards, and then deal 1 to each player. Then take the remaining starting country cards and shuffle them into the rest of the country deck. And then you're going to deal out or shuffle out the number of cards or country cards determined by the number of players. In a 2-player game, you're going to deal out 24 country cards. In a 3-player, 27. In a 4-player, 32. And please see the rules for the 5th-player expansion for that. Now, you can also customize this step to determine how long or short you want the gameplay to be. If you wanted a lengthier game, then use the entire deck. If you wanted a shorter one, even in a 4-player game, you could do 24 country cards. It's totally up to you. Shuffle them and then put them in the country card deck, face down. Once you've created the deck, go ahead and draw up the top 3 country cards into their respective places on the play mat. Then, once a turn order has been determined, the last player will start ahead on the victory point track up here. So let's say blue is first, green is second, and then red is going to be 3rd player. Red is actually going to start on the number 2. If I can reach it, it's a pretty big board. Blue is going to start on the 1, and then, blue is going to start on 0, and then red on 1, or blue on 1, 0. Then all players should take their starting country card, revealing what it is. So this one is Japan. Focus. Japan. It tells you this is in Asia, so I'm going to put Japan over in the Asia. And then I'm going to put one of my cubes onto the play area, into one of the cities. Then each player is going to do the same. So player 2 in Italy will go into Europe, placing one of their city cubes, or one of their DNA marker cubes there. And then lastly, red in France. Also in Europe, placing then one of their cubes. And then setup is complete, and you are ready to begin play. To begin play, you're going to take then, starting with the first player, and go through the turn order in their phases 1 through 5. And that looks like this. So the turn summary. Let's see if I can get this right. Okay, the turn summary. DNA. Score 1 DNA point for each country you control. 2. Choose a country card, place it on the board, of one of the 3 face-up cards, or one of the face-down cards at random. You're either A, going to place it on the board, or B, discard it and draw up new trait cards, which I'll cover in just a moment. Evolution. Pay DNA points to put a trait card on an evolution space. And then infection. Count up your infectivity traits, place that many tokens on cities, and then roll for death. So, what does that look like? Well, first player is going to go, so they're going to they're going to begin by scoring DNA. So you get DNA for the number of countries you have equal or majority control of, including any bonuses on your player board. On the bacteria side, all players start with 1 bonus to their DNA, as indicated by that space right there. So to begin, I, as blue player, have control of 1 country, plus 1, so I'm going to move up the DNA track 2. And that's phase 1 of the turn summary. Next is phase 2, which is the country. So I'm going to choose a country from the visible countries over here. I know you guys can't see them, but there's 3 countries to choose from, or randomly face down. So I would take one of these countries. Let's take UK here. There we go. UK, Europe. It's going to go into Europe, and it can be gotten to by air or sea. So let's say I want to place this card. I would place it into Europe, just like that. I don't put a cube on it just yet. And then, or if I were to say discard it, I would take any remaining trait cards. If I have 5 trait cards, I discard all of them and pick up 5 new ones. Or let's say I had already gotten rid of some of my trait cards and I only had 1 remaining. Then I would discard the 1 remaining trait card and draw up 5 new ones. This is how you get more trait cards into your hand. You're not going to be bringing new ones into your hand at the end of each turn or at the end of each round. The only way to do it is to discard a country. But remember, once the countries are gone, that's going to trigger the end game event or the final scorings. So once you've drawn a card, you then replace it. Next is number 3, which is evolution. Pay DNA points, and the DNA points are around the track. So I would look at my hand of modifiers and determine if I want to do any of these. I think airborne's probably a strong one to get pretty early, and since I've only got 3 DNA points, I should be able, or 2 rather, because I started at 0, I should be able to afford this one. So let's say I want to pay 2 DNA points to do this. I'll put it on my board, just like so, and then move myself down the track 2 DNA markers. I know that's probably off camera there. There we go. See? Down and back at 0. Next is infection. So that's going to count my infectivity and place that many tokens. So everyone on the bacteria side starts with 2 infectivity. Again, let me try to bring this one a little bit closer. There we go. So I'm going to take 2 of my markers and put them in any legal spot. Legal placements are any places that I can travel to through my evolutions, or any corresponding place within the continent that I already infect, or a country that I already infect. So right now, I'm only in Japan, but I do now have airborne as an evolution, so I could travel to the UK, I could travel to Italy, or I could travel to France, thus allowing me to then infect in Europe. So I've got 2 cubes to place, or 2 markers, so let's go ahead and use my airborne trait to contest majority in Italy, and let's take majority in UK. Because right now, no one else can get to where I'm at in Asia, so next turn, hopefully I can maintain majority control in Japan. And then the last phase of a turn is to roll for death. So for each fully infected country you control, roll the death die. Then you're going to count your lethality here and any bonuses from your evolved traits. Take the die and roll that number or greater in order to, that number or less in order to kill it. So if I have an infectivity of 1, then the only number eligible to kill a country right now is going to be a 1. And that's it. Your turn ends, and then it goes to the next player. And that's how a round is played. Now, how do you acquire then other items? How does the game end? What does end game scoring look like? Well, to acquire event cards, every player that is on a country that is killed off is going to receive an event card. You may only have a maximum of 3 event cards in your hand at a time. If you already have 3 cards in your hand, 3 of these event cards in your hand, at the time that a country is killed, you may not collect a 4th one and choose one to keep. But you may at any point on your turn sell off an event card to move up the DNA track 1 point. The game will continue playing until sudden death mode and the end game is triggered. So once the final country card has been placed, so once there are no more cards in the deck and there are no more cards in the row, then sudden death begins. The world begins to collapse, and then the game immediately enters this sudden death mode. What that looks like is then, when in sudden death mode, the country phase on your tracker is skipped entirely. So, obviously in phase 2, you won't be able to collect new traits or place new countries. Once that happens, if any player has no tokens left on the board, meaning that they've been eradicated, then the game ends when that player has finished their turn. Additionally, if a player is unable to move, meaning they can't place any tokens on any countries, or they cannot roll the death die during their turn. So if it's my turn and I can't either place a token or roll for death, then the game immediately ends. Then you're going to take all of the scoring from the cards that are left on your evolution board. You're going to then add those back to your DNA track. Then you're going to go through the endgame scoring conditions, which, starting with Lucky Escape, is going to be the bonus 4 points for the player who has the most tokens left on the board at the end of the game. Then through each of the continents, you're going to give 6 points to the player who has killed the most countries in that continent. And then lastly, 7 points to the player who killed the country that has the most cities. And I think 9 is the maximum number of cities on any of the cards. And that's only, I think, 3 of the cities in the full deck. And remember, those may or may not have been discarded when doing the initial setup. So that's it. That's the setup and then the how-to for Plague Inc. So let's go ahead and continue play and take a green and red turn to kind of show you additionally what that looks like. So now that it's green player's turn, blue player has already conducted their turn. Green player is going to do the exact same thing starting in order. Phase 1, score up your DNA. Now green does have shared control here on Italy, so they're going to get 1 point for that, and then 1 point for still having this exposed on their evolution slide. So they're going to get 2 DNA points. So now they have a total of 3. Next phase is to choose a country card. So let's say they just pick this country card as an example. There we go. So this is going to be Mongolia, which goes in Asia. Next is going to be to choose evolution. Let's see what they've got. So they got some increased infectivity, which not too bad for coughing or mass hysteria. Airborne, heat resistance. Let's go ahead and evolve some coughing. So let's evolve coughing onto our board. We're going to pay the 2 DNA points for it. And now I've gotten an additional infectivity to place more cubes. Next phase is that infectivity. So I'm going to count up my infectivity, 1, 2, and 3. So I get to place 3 cubes on the board. Now, remembering the rules of cube placement, I cannot travel outside the continent that I'm on, so I can only place in climate available areas on the continent that I already infect. So I'm going to go ahead and actually trigger a death roll for Italy by placing 2 cubes here, and then I'm going to put another cube right up there into the UK. Once infectivity is done, then we're going to roll for death. So there is a country that has a majority controlled for the green player, so they're going to roll. Count up the lethality, which is a 1 right now. Roll the die, and oh my God, look at that. This country is now dead. So green player takes back all 3 of their cubes. Blue player takes back their 1 cube, and each of them move up that number on the track. 1, 2, and 3, and then 1. And now blue and green are each also going to take an event card. So event cards may not be used on the turn at which you receive them. So this card could be used next turn or sold off for a DNA point. This one is, if I play it, it'll tell you here if it has to be done at like the start of your turn or anything like that. So what'd this player get? Here we go. At the end of your turn, choose 1 climate-suitable country that you infect and place up to 2 tokens in that country. So I'll be able to play this at the end of my turn, thus triggering the event. Now red player's turn. Same thing. They're going to do exactly what the other players have done, phases or turn summary 1 through 5, and then do exactly that. Oh, sorry. And green player is also going to keep this card for endgame scoring purposes. So count up the DNA. Red again has majority control plus the 1 there. So they're going to go up 2 on the track. Then they're going to select a country. Oh, didn't place one back out. There we go. So let's say they just want to pick a random country. There we go. Spain. So Spain goes in Europe as well, just like that. Now this one needs to have heat resistance enabled in order to infect. So no one can infect that country because no one is yet heat resistant. So let's see what red ended up with. Well, these are pretty expensive ones, but let's say they want to go with waterborne, right? Something low cost early on. That'll cost red 2 DNA points. Next is evolution. Sorry, that was place in my country. That was evolution. Now infectivity, I get to place 2 markers. And the only places that I can put them are going to be in France or in the UK. So let's put them both there. Spread my wealth. Then I'm going to roll for death. Now, no country is fully infected, so it doesn't really help me. But I actually could have gone to Japan on that turn as well because I now have waterborne. So I could have gone over to Japan, which is a waterborne destination. But that's it. So now it's going to go back to player 1, and play is going to resume phase 1 through 5, and then each turn going until the end game is triggered. A couple of nuances to also kind of keep in mind is that some cards, event cards, will tell you to ignore climate conditions or anything else like that. So just follow the rules if ever those come out. For Outbreak specifically, let's take a quick look at that. Let's say you needed to get to a specific place. You could skip your infection phase to then move one of your tokens to another city on the board, ignoring all restrictions. So example, let's say red didn't really have a good placement, and let's say they weren't already in Europe. They could actually skip placing their 2 tokens and instead place 1 onto Spain, ignoring all resistances and travel. So it's sort of like, your way to get yourself out there in a different capacity. And that's it, guys. That's Plague Inc. So stay tuned while I go ahead and tear down the game and bring you my afterthoughts. Hey guys, so I hope you enjoyed that setup and playthrough of the game Plague Inc. So starting off, I guess my initial thoughts of this game were that it's a pretty solid and really streamlined and easy to get into engine builder type game. The little pieces are a lot of fun, for each of the colors. You get to put them down and around the board. And when it comes to nice acrylic pieces, the components definitely really help the game along. Because as I'm playing and putting my disease cubes throughout the cards that are out there on the board, I really do feel that I'm getting stronger and stronger each time that a round happens. The quality of the components, for the most part, are really well done, especially for the Kickstarter that I don't think that they had too many crazy stretch goals or anything like that, but the base components and the core elements of the game, again, really well done. The game itself is actually very beginner friendly, so that's really good for players that I will often introduce this game to, because it's really simple for them to get into. And I do enjoy engine builder games. One of my favorites obviously being Terraforming Mars or even like Gizmos. This one, you've got 5 elements and 5 stages that are basically listed right down the side of the board. So on every player's turn, it's usually really clear exactly what they're able to do. A couple of drawbacks for this particular game is that I don't think that the rulebook is really well laid out. So there are some nuances and maybe some questions that would come up uniquely during play that I don't think are really well addressed in the rulebook, nor do I think that it's very clear in its structure even. So they have the setup of 1 through 5, but then the way that they laid it out, I left a little bit to be desired. I guess I'll leave it at that. But overall, guys, Plague Inc., why you should add to your collection is if you want a solid engine building game that is pretty straightforward for just about anyone to learn and get into, Plague Inc. is definitely going to be the game for you. Reasons why you may not want to add it into your collection is there's not anything really groundbreaking about the game. The main play area, while it does include a pretty nice board for holding the cards and things like that, it's just okay. I guess they could have probably done a little bit better job of mapping it out maybe in a different way. But I get, it's a card, token sort of placement type of game while you're building your player tableau of the diseases that you're evolving. I think a little more uniqueness into some of the pathogens that you're able to evolve with could have been nice because, for example, coughing and, fever have basically identical attributes. So having some sort of variant there would have been nice. Otherwise, the replayability is just okay. Like, I'll probably break this out for anyone who hasn't played it because it is so easy to get into. But after I've played through it, about a handful or more of times, while it's still fun, I'm definitely ready to play something different. So anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on Plague Game. I'd welcome your thoughts on this game. Were you an original Kickstarter? Did you pick it up after the fact? Any other comments, please leave them down below. I'm happy to review them. If you need any help about the game, leave them comments down below. Happy to help out as best as I can. If you've enjoyed the content, really appreciate the support. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching.